Welcome to the Sunday Reach by the Indian Dominicans. Dear brothers and sisters, we are on the 18th Sunday of the Ordinary Time, and the liturgy of the day invites us to reflect upon the incident of the multiplication of the loaves. This event of feeding is not new in the Bible. When the people of Israel cried to Moses in Exodus chapter 16, saying, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." And God rained down bread for them from heaven to satisfy their hunger. Then they cried for meat, and he gave them quails. Again in chapter 17, we see them asking Moses for water to drink, and God gave them water from the rock to drink. God provided for them generously to satisfy their need. The same heaven, the same rock, in fact, now is feeding once again the people who are hungry. God never grows tired of caring for the needy. The founder of KFC, Colonel Harlan Sanders, was on an airplane when an infant started crying and would not stop, even though the mother and the flight attendants tried their best. Finally, Colonel asked if he could hold the baby. He gently rocked it to sleep. Later, a passenger said, "We all appreciate what you did for us." Colonel Sanders replied, "I did not do it for us, I did it for the baby." This is the quality of God too, in great intensity, that He does many things for us for love of us. As Psalmist asked in chapter 78, can God spread a table in the wilderness? Yes, He can spread a table for the people in the wilderness. That is what we heard in the gospel today. But if we limit our understanding of this miracle to mere satisfaction of the physical hunger, then we are not getting the core of this event. Here we see a meeting of the compassion of God and need of the people. Here there is a meeting of the power of God and the helplessness of the disciples. And we also see here a meeting of the master who wills and the servants who execute. Our reflection upon these three meetings could help us in our spiritual nourishment today. Meeting of the compassion of God and need of the people. Jesus had moved to a lonely place, perhaps to mourn the death of his cousin John the Baptist, who was just beheaded, or because he was wearied of his ministry. He wanted to have some time for himself and his disciples. But when he saw a crowd coming to him, he just forgot about himself and began to minister to them, teaching them and healing the sick amongst them. This was true of him in many occasions, beginning with his own incarnation. For letter to Philippians chapter 2 verse 6 says, "Though he was in the form of God, he did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men." This emptying himself constantly happened to him when he encountered people who were in need of him. This was also true of many of his true disciples. Saint Dominic, to pick an example, once when confronted with people who were afflicted by famine, sold all his costly books, saying that the living skins of the famished were more important than the dead skins of his books. Meeting of the power of God and helplessness of the disciples. When it was evening, disciples said to Jesus, This is a lonely place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go into villages and buy food for themselves." In the Luke's version of the gospel, we hear Jesus telling them, "You give them something to eat." And they replied, "We have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fish, unless we are to go and buy food for all these people." They see a problem, but they also realize that they are helpless. They feel that there are no enough resources with them to feed all of them. What are 5 loaves and 2 fish before 5,000 plus people? Martha and Mary faced such a helpless situation too, when their brother died before the only one who they believed could heal him arrived. But we are also asked to remember that our God is a powerful God. He is the God of impossible things. When disciples did not know what to do, He multiplied the loaves before them. When Martha and Mary thought that they lost their brother forever, Jesus raised him up from the dead. A meeting of master who wills and servant who executes. Jesus' decision to multiply the loaves and fish was not a random one. It was not an accidental decision He made. He always knew what He would do there. This is what we see in John's version of the same event. After asking Philip, "How are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" we read in the text, "This He said to test Him, for He Himself knew what He would do." Jesus' compassion moves Him to work wonders for His people. He always has the power to do the same. But He invites the disciples to share in this act of caring for others. Just as Jesus willed to do a miracle to multiply the bread and took the help of disciples to execute it, so does He call each of us to share His compassionate plan to care for people around us. If we see people around us suffering these days, we need to care for them, help them. Let us become those helping hands of God to the needful. Not that He can't do it without us, but that He calls us to be part of His loving care for His children. Amen.